The Sterling Foundation Hall had never felt so cold. I was sitting there, in that burgundy velvet chair that creaked with every movement, feeling the Italian marble beneath my feet tremble. The dark wood-paneled walls rose to the ceiling in Gothic arches, and portraits of past patrons watched me with severe, silent eyes. Among them, my father's portrait, freshly hung, the paint still smelling new. 3 weeks. It had been only 3 weeks since the funeral. Attorney Richard Sterling adjusted his glasses on the tip of his nose and opened the aged leather folder. I'd known this man since childhood. He used to bring me Swiss chocolates when he came to dinner at our house. But that day, his face was rigid, almost stone-like. He avoided my gaze. To my left, Cynthia, my stepmother, looked impeccable. Immaculate white Chanel suit, blonde hair pulled into a perfect bun, red nails drumming lightly on her Hermes bag. She didn't wear black to the funeral. Said my father hated somber colors. A lie. He loved navy blue ties. Beside her, Marcus, her personal attorney, a man in a charcoal gray suit with snake-like eyes. He was smiling. It wasn't a kind smile. Well, Richard cleared his throat. We are gathered here for the reading of the will of Edward Montgomery Sterling, deceased on the— Richard, darling, Cynthia interrupted him, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Before we begin, I need to present a document. Something Edward entrusted to me in his final weeks. My heart jumped. Richard frowned. Cynthia, the will was registered 5 years ago. Any alteration would need to be documented and authenticated. Marcus stood up, opening a briefcase. That's exactly what we did. Here it is, a codicil to the original will, dated 3 months ago, signed by Edward Montgomery Sterling, witnessed by 2 medical professionals, and properly notarized. He slid the document across the table like someone playing a winning card. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Richard picked up the papers with trembling hands. I could hear my own breathing echoing in my ears. The wall clock marked each second with a cruel tick-tock. This is— Richard began, but Cynthia cut him off again. Recent. Yes. Necessary. Absolutely. She turned to me for the first time, and her ice-blue eyes pierced through me. Edward was very worried about you in recent months, Vivian. Your emotional instability. The episodes. The unfounded accusations. I felt my stomach turn. Instability. Accusations. Dramatic pause. I knew exactly what was happening. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides pain and grief. I felt anger. Cynthia didn't wait for Richard to continue. She simply reached out, took the document, and began to read. Her voice echoed through the hall with theatrical clarity, each word chosen to wound. I, Edward Montgomery Sterling, being of sound mind and body, declare through this instrument that my daughter Vivian Catherine Sterling— She paused, savoring the moment— has demonstrated increasing signs of mental and emotional instability. After consultation with mental health professionals and deep personal reflection, I conclude that she is not fit to administer the assets and responsibilities that comprise my estate. The words fell on me like stones. I looked at Richard. He was pale, eyes fixed on the document as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His hands trembled imperceptibly. Therefore, Cynthia continued, and I could swear there was a smile in her voice, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the Sterling Foundation, the family property, and all investments and assets, to the care of my beloved wife, Cynthia Marie Sterling, trusting in her judgment and good sense to administer them appropriately. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't move, didn't cry, didn't scream. I felt all eyes in the room turn to me. Richard with pity, Marcus with satisfaction, Cynthia with poorly disguised triumph. Even the secretary in the corner, a middle-aged woman typing silently, paused and shot me a look of compassion. Mentally unstable. Those words ricocheted in my mind. How many times in the last 2 years had Cynthia planted that seed, whispering to my father that I was acting strange, suggesting that my sadness after my mother's death was excessive even after 5 years, casually commenting to family friends that I was under stress and needed help. Gaslighting, the word I'd only recently learned, but which perfectly described the last 7 years of my life. Vivian. Richard's voice brought me back. Would you like to say something? I took a deep breath. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of polished wood, expensive perfume, and anticipated victory. No, I replied, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. Not yet. Cynthia arched a perfectly drawn eyebrow. How mature of you, dear. I see you're accepting your father's decision well. Your father's decision. As if those words had really come from him. But I wasn't going to give her the pleasure of seeing me break. Not there. Not in front of them. So I simply looked into her eyes, those empty blue eyes, and smiled. A small smile, but deliberate. And for the first time since it all began, I saw something I didn't expect to see on Cynthia's face. Uncertainty. That's when Richard stood up. The movement was so abrupt that everyone in the room turned. He adjusted his glasses, picked up his own briefcase, an old brown leather case I remembered seeing him carry for years, and opened it with a sharp click. Cynthia. His voice was different now. Deeper. Authoritative. Are you aware that by presenting this codicil, you've just triggered something Edward and I called the Sterling Protocol? Cynthia's smile faltered. Protocol? What are you talking about, Richard? I'm talking, he pulled out a sealed envelope with a red wax seal, about a contingency clause Edward instituted exactly 5 years ago when he drafted his original will. Marcus leaned forward. Richard, with all due respect, any additional clause would need to be in the official records. Oh, it is, Richard interrupted him, and for the first time that afternoon, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd known as a child. He picked up another document, filed with the law firm Sterling and Associates, with copies at National Bank and Safety Deposit Box 1147, Central Branch, all perfectly legal and registered. Cynthia was tense now. Her fingers stopped drumming. And what exactly does this protocol establish? Richard stared at her over his glasses. It establishes that if anyone, and I quote verbatim, presents any document altering my original will, especially to the detriment of my daughter Vivian, that person automatically triggers a complete investigation of their actions and motivations, with immediate revelation of evidence that may be hidden. The air in the room changed. It was as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. This is absurd. Marcus stood up. You're suggesting that my client... I'm not suggesting anything, Richard cut him off. I'm simply executing the instructions left by my friend and client of 40 years. Edward Montgomery Sterling was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. He turned to me, and for the first time that afternoon, his eyes met mine. There was something in them, something that seemed to say, "Hold tight." "Vivian," he said, his voice softer now. "Your father asked me that, should this moment come, I deliver this to you." From inside the briefcase, he pulled out a small parchment envelope. My name was written on the front in my father's unmistakable handwriting, those angular, precise letters, written with blue ink from the Mont Blanc pen my mother gave him on their 20th wedding anniversary. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. It was light, but seemed to weigh tons. "What is this?" Cynthia stood up, her composure finally cracking. "Richard, you can't just—" "I can and I will," he replied calmly. "And according to the Sterling Protocol, this meeting is officially adjourned until Miss Sterling has had time to examine the contents of this envelope and decide her next steps." Marcus tried to protest, but Richard simply began packing his documents. "Good afternoon, everyone. Vivian, my office is at your disposal when you're ready." And then he did something that caught me completely by surprise. He winked at me. A quick wink, almost imperceptible, but it was there. My father hadn't abandoned me. He had left a plan. I needed to get out of that room. The envelope burned in my hands like hot coals. I passed Cynthia without looking back, crossed the marble corridor where our steps echoed like gunshots, and pushed through the heavy mahogany doors that led to the street. The cold October air hit me like a slap. I breathed deeply, once, twice, 3 times, trying to calm the hurricane inside my chest. How did we get here? I closed my eyes and, against my will, the memories came. I was 19 when I met Cynthia. 5 years after my mother's death, a brain aneurysm, sudden and devastating, that left us no time to say goodbye. My father never fully recovered. For years, he was a shadow of himself, moving through the house like a ghost, touching objects that belonged to her, sitting in her favorite armchair in the library, still waiting for her to appear with her smile and a book in her hands. Then Cynthia entered our lives. She was a curator at a gallery in Manhattan. She met my father at an art auction. Of course, because my father collected Renaissance paintings, the passion my mother had awakened in him. Cynthia was everything my mother wasn't: blonde, extroverted, meticulously organized. Where my mother was warm colors and spontaneous laughter, Cynthia was cold lines and calculated smiles. At first, I pretended to be happy. My father was smiling again. That had to be good, right? But then, subtly, things began to change. First came the portraits. My mother smiled from every room in the house, in the living room, in the hallway, in Dad's study. Cynthia suggested that perhaps it was time to put away some memories, to move forward in a healthy way. One by one, the portraits disappeared, replaced by abstract art, by golden mirrors, by emptiness. Then came the objects. My mother's porcelain collection, accidentally broken during a renovation. Her jewelry, donated to charity because it was just gathering dust. Her books, her dresses, her perfumes, all disappearing like smoke. And then Cynthia started on me. Subtle comments. "Vivian, don't you think you're a bit obsessed with the past? Dear, still crying for your mother after so long. Maybe it's time to seek professional help? Edward, I'm worried about our girl. She seems so unstable lately." I tried to talk to my father, but Cynthia had already planted the seeds. Every time I expressed discomfort, he saw emotional instability. When I questioned the changes in the house, he saw unhealthy attachment to the past. When I suggested Cynthia was manipulating things, he looked at me as if I'd gone crazy. "Vivian, Cynthia only wants what's best for us. She's trying to help us heal. Why are you being so hostile?" And gradually, I was being erased. From conversations, from decisions, from family plans. When my father got sick, pancreatic cancer, aggressive and fast, Cynthia took complete control. I could barely visit him without her being there, controlling every word, every minute. In those last weeks, he barely recognized me. The medications, the pain, the disease, or something else. I would never know for sure. End of flashback. I opened my eyes. My vision was blurred with tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. I looked at the envelope in my hands. "Dad, did you know?" With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. I returned to that cursed room the next day. Richard had scheduled a necessary continuation of the process, as he formally put it. But I knew what it really was. A trap. Cynthia was there, of course. But this time, she'd brought reinforcements. Dr. Harrison, a private psychiatrist. A man in his early 60s, graying hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and a smile that tried to be comforting but failed miserably. "Vivian," Cynthia began, her voice dripping false concern. "After yesterday, Marcus and I talked at length about the best way to proceed. And, dear, We're genuinely worried about you." I didn't respond. Just sat in the same burgundy velvet chair and waited. The behavior you've demonstrated, continuing to contest your father's expressed wishes, these unfounded accusations about manipulation, are clear signs that you need professional help. Marcus opened a new folder. "Miss Sterling, we took the liberty of consulting Dr. Harrison, one of the state's most respected psychiatrists. He reviewed your medical history." "You did what?" For the first time, my voice rose. "You don't have authorization to access my medical records." "Actually," Dr. Harrison leaned forward, clasping his hands, "since your father listed Mrs. Sterling as legal guardian in his final days, and considering the concerns expressed about your mental stability, we have legal grounds for an evaluation." "It's all for your own good, Vivian." I felt my blood boil. "An evaluation?" "Yes," Cynthia smiled, and it was a predator's smile. "In fact, Dr. Harrison has already prepared the papers for a voluntary 30-day admission to Bellevue Clinic. A quiet place, upstate, where you can rest, process your loss, and receive the treatment you clearly need." Commitment. She was trying to lock me up. Silence me. Remove me completely from the board. "And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Marcus responded, "Then, unfortunately, we'll be forced to seek involuntary commitment. We have sufficient documentation. The delusional accusations against Mrs. Sterling, the emotional episodes reported by witnesses, your growing social isolation in recent months. A judge wouldn't hesitate to authorize it." Checkmate complete. Any resistance from me would be used as proof of insanity. If I yelled, it was hysteria. If I stayed calm, it was dissociation. If I contested, it was paranoia. Cynthia had prepared the perfect trap. She stood up, smoothing her impeccable suit. "So, Vivian, what will it be? Will you accept help voluntarily, or are we going to have to do this the hard way?" That's when Richard entered the room. He didn't knock. Simply opened the door, and his face was different. There was an energy in him I hadn't seen in years. He carried another envelope. This one was larger, thicker. "Cynthia," he said, and his voice cut through the air like a knife. "Before you proceed with this plan, there's something you need to know." "Richard, this is none of your business," Marcus began. "On the contrary, Marcus, it's exactly my business. As executor of the original will and Edward Sterling's attorney for 4 decades. He turned to me. "Vivian, did you open the envelope I gave you yesterday?" I held the envelope in my purse, still sealed. I had waited. Something told me to wait for the right moment. "Not yet." "Then I suggest you do so now. In front of all of us." The silence in the room was palpable. Cynthia was pale. Marcus confused. Dr. Harrison clearly uncomfortable, realizing he'd walked into something much bigger than a simple psychiatric evaluation. I took the envelope from my purse. The paper was thick, expensive. On the front, in my father's handwriting, "For Vivian. When the lie reaches its peak, open this." With hands that no longer trembled, I tore open the envelope. Inside, 5 parchment cards, each with a handwritten phrase and a sequence of numbers. I began to read aloud. First, where Botticelli hides his deepest secret numbers, 1482-285-7. Second, the code you and I created that rainy summer numbers, book page line 3rd. The place where your mother and I married holds more than memories numbers, vault 1147 NB 4th. The truth is in pixels and bytes, not on paper numbers, HDD 2TB. Encrypted 5th. When all else fails, remember what I always said about serpents, they can only lie until someone puts them in the sun. I looked up. Cynthia was frozen, her face white as chalk. Because she knew. Not what the cards said, but what they represented. My father hadn't been deceived. He had pretended. Waited. documented everything. And now, from beyond the grave, he was handing me the weapons to destroy the lie she had built. So, I said, carefully putting away the cards, about that commitment, I think I'll have to decline. I looked directly into Cynthia's eyes. And I suggest you and your lawyer start looking for a good defense attorney. And for the first time in 7 years, I was the one who smiled. The New York Public Library was one of my father's favorite places. On those endless afternoons after my mother's death, he would take me there, and we'd spend hours among the silent corridors, seeking refuge in books and art. I knew exactly where to go. The cards in my hands were like a treasure map, and the first was the key to everything. Where Botticelli hides his deepest secret, 1482-285-7, I pushed through the revolving doors of the library and climbed the marble stairs. My steps echoed in the almost religious silence of the place. A few students scattered across tables, an elderly couple reading newspapers, a child drawing while her mother searched for books. Everything so normal. So distant from the storm that was my life 48 hours ago. I went straight to the Renaissance art section. 3rd floor, West Corridor, exactly where it had always been. 1482, the year. Easily identifiable. It was when Botticelli painted Primavera. But there was another painting my father obsessively loved from that year. Our private joke, our shared secret. My fingers ran along the spines until I found it, Botticelli, The Complete Works. A massive volume, with a dark green leather cover and Bible-thin pages. 285. The page. I opened carefully, and there it was, The Birth of Venus. My father used to say that Venus represented my mother, the same reddish-golden hair color, the same serene elegance. He'd even bought a reproduction of the shell Venus stands on, a small ceramic piece that sat on his nightstand. Used to sit. Until Cynthia, accidentally, broke it during a cleaning. 7. But 7 what? I looked at the printed reproduction, studied every detail. And then I remembered. My father had taught me a game when I was 12. Vivian, true art isn't just in what you see, but in what's hidden. The masters always left secret messages. I counted 7 elements from left to right. Zephyr, the wind, the nymph, Venus, the hour, holding the cloak, the roses, the shell. The 7th element was the shell. I turned the page. On the back, in faded blue ink, the same ink from my father's Mont Blanc, there was a handwritten note, NB Vault 1147, code, Beatrice's birth date. My heart raced. Beatrice. My mother's middle name. Beatrice Catherine Montgomery. Birth date, July 14, 1966. I tore off a piece of paper and wrote, 07141966. Stephen Wu lived in a chaotic loft in Tribeca that looked more like a mad professor's hideout for movies. Books stacked from floor to ceiling, paintings leaning against walls, auction catalogs mixed with Chinese takeout containers, and the unmistakable smell of strong coffee and printer ink. Stephen had been my father's best friend since college. Both obsessive Renaissance art scholars, they spent hours debating techniques of painters dead for 500 years. When my father got sick, Stephen visited every day, until Cynthia suggested that the visits were tiring the patient too much. He opened the door on the second knock, disheveled gray hair, crooked round glasses, cardigan with coffee stains. Vivian. He pulled me into a tight hug. Child, you don't know how much I've missed you. That woman. I know. I cut in gently. Stephen, I need your help. 5 minutes later, we were sitting among piles of books, with my father's cards spread out on a wooden table stained by decades of coffee mugs. Stephen put on his glasses and studied each card with the intensity of someone deciphering an ancient manuscript. Your father was brilliant, he murmured. This here is pure genius. Can you help me decipher it? You've already deciphered part of the first one, yes? Botticelli, Vault. NB, Vault 1147, code is my mother's birth date. National Bank, he nodded. Your father had a safety deposit box there since the 90s. Never told me what he kept, but now it makes sense. He picked up the second card. The code you and I created that rainy summer book page line. Do you remember any specific summer? Any code you created? I closed my eyes, searching through memories. Rainy summer. And then, like lightning, I remembered. I was 13. I whispered. It was the summer after my mother's death. It rained almost all of July. Dad didn't want to leave the house, so we locked ourselves in his library, and he taught me. What? Substitution cipher. Based on books. We'd choose a book, a page, a line, and use the first letter of each word to create secret messages. Stephen slapped the table, causing several books to fall. Genius. But which book? I thought. It had to be something only we would know. Dante's Inferno, I murmured. Bilingual edition. John Charty translation. My mother gave it to him for their wedding anniversary. He read one canto to me each night, translating the passages in Italian. Stephen was already at the shelves, frantically searching. I have a copy here somewhere. Your father lent it to me years ago and… here. He pulled out a worn volume, faded red cover. But which page? Which line? I picked up the third card. The place where your mother and I married holds more than memories. Chapel of San Michele, I said immediately. Small town in Napa Valley. They got married there in 1985. I always wanted to visit. My eyes widened. Canto 3. The Gate of Hell. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. My father used to joke that it was the opposite of marriage. It was where all hope began. Canto 3. Stephen flipped quickly. Which line? Line 9. Their wedding day. September 9th. Stephen found the passage. Line 9, the first letters of each word. THROUGHMETHEWAYTOTHECITY, threw me the way to the city, I read aloud. The first line of Canto 3. Stephen was scribbling feverishly. Vivian, this isn't just a reference. It's a password. A passphrase. I bet it unlocks something on the hard drive mentioned in the fourth card. We looked at each other. We need to go to the bank, I said. Now. National Bank occupied an Art Deco building in the heart of Manhattan. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and that reverent silence that only century-old banks possess. I was nervous. My hands were sweating as I held my father's death certificate, my ID, and the card with the code. The manager, Mrs. Morrison, an elegant woman in her early 50s, received us in her private office. Miss Sterling, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a highly valued client. Thank you. I need to access Vault 1147. She consulted the system. Ah, yes. Vault registered in the name of Edward Montgomery Sterling, with Vivian Catherine Sterling as co-holder since 2020. Co-holder. My father had added me 5 years ago. While Cynthia thought she was erasing me, he was protecting me. I'll need identification and the access code. I handed over my documents and, with trembling fingers, wrote 07141966. Mrs. Morrison typed. The screen flashed green. Access authorized. Please follow me. We descended 3 levels by elevator. The doors opened to a concrete corridor lit by fluorescent lights. Our footsteps echoed. The air was cold, dry, preserved. The vault room was a steel-reinforced chamber. Hundreds of safety deposit boxes aligned on the walls like small metal tombs. 1147. Mrs. Morrison used her key. I used mine, a small bronze key that was with my father's cards. Click. The box slid out. Inside, only 3 items. 1. A thick black leather notebook with hundreds of pages. 2. An external hard drive, 2 terabytes, sealed in anti-static plastic. 3. A letter, in a white envelope, with my name. I picked up the letter first. My vision was blurred. With trembling hands, I opened it. My father's handwriting filled the page. My dear Vivian, if you're reading this, it means Cynthia showed her true nature. It means my plan worked. I'm sorry, my love. I'm sorry for pretending. I'm sorry for letting you think, even for a moment, that I had abandoned you. But I had to. I needed her to feel safe. For her to show her hand completely. I realized the truth about Cynthia 3 years ago. Small things at first. Money disappearing, documents being altered, her lies contradicting themselves. I hired a private investigator. What he discovered destroyed me. She didn't love me. Never loved me. She was after the foundation, the money, the legacy your mother and I built. In this vault, you'll find everything. 3 years of documentation, proof of forgery, embezzlement, manipulation, all meticulously recorded. The notebook contains my business diaries, every suspicious transaction, every revealing conversation. The hard drive contains digital files, emails she thought she'd deleted, bank records, even audio recordings. The password is in the Dante code we created that summer. Use all of this. Expose the truth. But Vivian, most importantly, don't let this embitter you. Don't let anger consume your heart the way it consumed mine in recent years. Your mother wouldn't have wanted that. She would have said, Edward, revenge is for the weak. Truth is for the strong. So be strong. My daughter. Be the extraordinary woman you already are. I always loved you. Always. Dad, I let the letter fall to my lap. The tears I'd held back for weeks finally came, a flood of pain, anger, relief, and love. Stephen placed a hand on my shoulder. He protected you to the end. I nodded, unable to speak. I picked up the notebook. Page after page of meticulous notes. March 15, 2022. Unauthorized transfer of $50,000 from foundation account to personal account in name of CMS Holdings. June 3, 2022. Discovered 5 paintings from collection replaced with forgeries. Originals possibly sold. September 22, 2022. Recording obtained. Cynthia discussing with attorney Marcus about speeding up the process and ensuring daughter stays out of the will. There were dozens of entries like this. Hundreds of proofs. And the hard drive. We'll need a secure computer to open this, Stephen said. My office. Now. Stephen's laptop was old but reliable. We connected the hard drive, and a password window appeared. I typed carefully. Through me the way to the city access granted. The screen filled with folders. Hundreds of them. Organized by date, by type, by level of evidence. Intercepted emails, bank records, conversation, audio, surveillance videos, forged documents, originals and copies, but in the center of the screen, a different folder. For Vivian, watch first, I clicked. A single video file. Final message.mp4. I took a deep breath and hit play. The screen flickered. And then there he was. My father. Sitting in his library, surrounded by books and paintings, wearing that navy blue wool cardigan my mother had knitted. His face was thin, this was recorded in his final months, but his eyes were clear. Focused. Determined. Hello, my dear Vivian. His voice filled the office, and I felt my heart break. If you're watching this, it means it worked. It means you're smart and strong, exactly as I always knew you'd be. He smiled, that gentle smile I remembered from childhood. I know you must be confused, maybe even angry with me, and you have every right to be. But I need you to understand, I was never deceived by Cynthia. I knew. Every lie, every manipulation, every calculated move. He leaned forward. 3 years ago, I started noticing inconsistencies. Small things. A document here, a transaction there. At first, I wanted to believe I was imagining it. But then I hired an investigator, and the truth came out. Cynthia Meyer, not even Sterling, refused to legally change her name, has a history. You're looking at the files now, I suppose. 3 previous marriages. 3 convenient widowers. 3 substantial inheritances. No formal charges, of course. She's careful. Smart. But not as smart as she thought. He picked up a pen and twirled it between his fingers, a nervous habit I knew well. When I discovered it, my first instinct was to expose her immediately. Confront her, denounce her, protect you from her. But my attorney, our friend Richard, made me see something. If I confronted her without irrefutable evidence, she'd run. Destroy proof. Disappear and find another victim. So we did it differently. I pretended to be the old fool in love. Pretended not to notice the manipulations. And meanwhile, I documented everything. Every lie. Every crime. His eyes became more serious. Vivian, I know I hurt you in the process. When you came to me with concerns about Cynthia and I dismissed them. God, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Seeing the pain in your eyes and not being able to explain. But I needed her to believe she was winning. That I was completely under her control. A tear rolled down his face. When I got sick, truly sick, I knew time was running out. So I structured everything. The false will Richard would read. The secret protocol. The clues. This drive. I knew Cynthia would present a document contesting your right to the inheritance. I knew she'd try to paint you as unstable, incapable. It's what she does. It's her pattern. But this time, she chose the wrong victim. Because this time, the victim had a father who loved her enough to fake his own blindness. He stood up, approached the camera. Vivian Catherine Sterling, you are my greatest work. More valuable than any painting, more precious than any fortune. You have your mother's intelligence, her strength, her kindness. Use this evidence. Expose Cynthia. But not for revenge, for justice. For the other women she might destroy if she remains free. And when it's all over, when the truth comes to light and you recover what's rightfully yours. He smiled again, and it was the smile of the man who taught me to ride a bike, who read bedtime stories, who took me to museums on Saturday afternoons. Live, my dear. Live fully, wildly, courageously. Find love. Build your own legacy. Be happy. That's the best revenge of all. Being incredibly, brilliantly happy. I love you, Vivian. Always loved you. Always will. Your father eternally, Edward Sterling. The screen went black. The silence in the office was absolute. Stephen was crying silently. So was I. But through the tears, I felt something more. Determination. My father hadn't just left me weapons. He'd left me a complete playbook to destroy Cynthia's lie. And I was going to follow every step. The meeting was scheduled for 10 days later. Same room. Same burgundy velvet chairs. But this time, there were more people. The Sterling Foundation Board, 7 members, including 2 university professors, a museum curator, and 3 philanthropic businesspeople. Besides them, a detective from the Financial Crimes Division. And a district attorney. Cynthia entered confidently, Marcus at her side. She wore a light pink suit, the color of innocent victory, I suppose. Her smile faltered when she saw the full room. What is this, Richard? Marcus demanded. We weren't informed about additional witnesses. They're not witnesses, Richard replied calmly. They're stakeholders and legal observers, all completely appropriate. Cynthia saw me. I was sitting at the head of the table, calm, with a laptop in front of me and a thick folder of documents. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Vivian, she tried the maternal tone. Dear, I know the last few days have been difficult, but we need to resolve this as a family. We were never family. I cut in, my voice firm. And today, everyone here will understand why. I turned the laptop so the screen was visible to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vivian Sterling, only daughter of Edward Montgomery Sterling. 10 days ago, I was informed that my father had disinherited me, declaring me mentally unstable. I paused. Today, I'm going to prove that document is fake. And more, I'm going to prove that the woman sitting there is a serial criminal. Marcus stood up. This is slander. I demand. Sit down, Marcus, the detective ordered, or you'll be escorted out. I took a deep breath and began. First, the forged will. You'll notice it's dated 3 months ago. But in this folder, I held up a document. I have medical records proving my father was in a medically induced coma on that date, unable to sign anything. I passed copies to the board. The signature was forged. We have analysis from 3 handwriting experts confirming the enlarged photos showed minuscule but definitive differences. Cynthia was pale. Second, the financial embezzlement. Over the last 3 years, exactly $2.3 million was diverted from the Sterling Foundation to offshore accounts. I clicked on the laptop. Spreadsheets appeared on screen. These transactions were meticulously documented by my father, who suspected fraud. Every cent can be traced to accounts registered under CMS Holdings, a shell company registered in Delaware, whose sole shareholder is. I turned the screen to show the registration document. Cynthia Marie Sloan. Her maiden name, before successively becoming Mrs. Davidson, Mrs. Beaumont, Mrs. Fitzgerald, and finally, Mrs. Sterling. One of the board members gasped. For previous marriages, she murmured. 4, I confirmed. And in all 4 cases, the husbands died under convenient circumstances, all leaving substantial inheritances, all after short marriages, all with wills altered months before death. The prosecutor leaned forward, making feverish notes. Third, I continued, my voice growing in confidence. The recordings. I clicked play. Cynthia's voice filled the room, a phone conversation with Marcus, recorded 8 months ago. Marcus, we need to speed this up. He's starting to ask questions. If he discovers the offshore accounts before we alter the will. Cynthia, forging a will is a federal crime. I'm not asking for your legal opinion, Marcus. I'm paying you to fix it. You've done it before, you can do it again. And the daughter? I'll take care of her. A psychiatric commitment solves it. Nobody believes crazy people. I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was sepulchral. Cynthia had her hands over her mouth. Marcus was gray. And finally, I turned the laptop once more. My father's message. I hit play on the video. For 6 minutes, everyone watched in absolute silence as Edward Sterling, from beyond the grave, exposed the truth, explained his plan, declared his love for me and his determination to protect future victims. When the video ended, several people were crying. The detective stood up. Cynthia Marie Sloan, you're under arrest for fraud, document forgery, embezzlement, and attempted illegal commitment. Marcus Reeves, you're also under arrest as an accomplice. Cynthia finally found her voice. You can't do this. I'm the widow. I have rights. You, Richard stood up, his voice sharp as a blade, have no rights. Your marriage to Edward Sterling was based on fraud. which means it's null and void. You're a con artist. A criminal. And finally, after years, justice will catch up with you. As the handcuffs clicked on Cynthia's wrists, she looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? Your father died hating you. I stood up, approached, and looked directly into her eyes. No, I said calmly. He died loving me so much that he dedicated the last years of his life to protecting me from you. And that, Cynthia, is a victory you'll never understand. And then, as she was led out, screaming, resisting, finally showing her true nature, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. 6 months later. The Sterling Gallery, renamed in honor of my mother, was finally restored. The walls that Cynthia had painted sterile white now carried warm colors: terracotta, teal blue, olive green. The paintings she'd sold were recovered, most of them, or replaced by equally significant pieces. And in the center of the main gallery, illuminated by natural light from newly installed skylights, hung my mother's favorite painting, The Annunciation, by Leonardo da Vinci. Not the original, of course, but an extraordinary reproduction my father had bought on a trip to Italy before I was born. My mother always said that painting represented possibilities. The moment before transformation, when everything is still potential and hope. I was there, alone, looking at the angel Gabriel extending his hand to Mary, when I heard footsteps. Still your favorite? Stephen entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Always will be. I took one of the cups, feeling the warmth in my hands. You know what I realized? What? For years, I thought my father had been deceived. That he was weak, blind, that he'd abandoned me for Cynthia. But he never abandoned you. No. He just pretended to be lost so I could find him. Stephen smiled. He trained you, Vivian. All those years with puzzles, codes, lessons about art and history. He was preparing you, not to inherit money, to inherit wisdom. I took a sip of coffee, letting his words settle. The foundation is restored. The diverted money was recovered. Cynthia is awaiting trial. And you, Stephen made a broad gesture, you transformed all of this into something beautiful. I looked around. The gallery was full of life now. Educational programs for young artists. Scholarships in my mother's name. Exhibitions bringing Renaissance art to communities that would never have access. It wasn't revenge, I murmured. It was justice. There's a difference. Your mother would be proud. My father too. We walked to the window. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with life. Honking cars, people rushing, the organized chaos of the city that never sleeps. You know, Stephen said after a moment, I found something in your father's diaries. An entry he wrote right after meeting Cynthia. What? He wrote, Today I met a woman who reminds me that serpents can be charming. But serpents will always be serpents. The question isn't if they'll bite, it's when. And when they bite, I'll be ready. I laughed, a genuine, liberating laugh. He always knew. Always. He just waited for the right moment. And taught you to wait too. I turned to Stephen. Thank you. For everything. For believing in me when no one else did. Always, child. Always. Later that night, alone in the library that had been my father's, now mine, I picked up the last card he'd left. Fifth, when all else fails, remember what I always said about serpents, they can only lie until someone puts them in the sun. I smiled and put the card in a velvet box, along with the others. Memories. Lessons. Love transformed into strategy, strategy transformed into salvation. The inheritance my father left me wasn't money. It was the ability to think, to plan, to wait for the right moment. It was emotional intelligence disguised as puzzles. It was unconditional love manifested as silent trust. And that was an inheritance no one could steal. So, why am I telling you this story? It's not to seek pity. It's not to glorify revenge. It's because I know that many of you have gone through or are going through something similar. Someone trying to rewrite your story. Trying to paint you as crazy, unstable, unworthy. Trying to erase you from your own narrative. It could be a family member, a partner, a boss, someone who smiles to your face while stabbing you in the back. And the hardest thing, the most painful, is when no one believes you. When you start to doubt your own sanity. When the manipulation is so subtle, so systematic, that you begin to think, what if they're right? What if I really am crazy? You're not. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Seek allies, because there's always someone who sees through the lie. My father taught me that truth doesn't shout. It waits. It watches. It collects evidence. And when the right moment comes, it simply appears. Inevitable. Undeniable. Powerful. Today, the Sterling Gallery is a place of beauty and learning. Cynthia is serving 8 years in prison. They discovered she was involved in larger schemes, affecting dozens of victims. Marcus was disbarred. And I'm living. I met someone, an art history professor who fell in love with the paintings first, then with me. We travel. We laugh. We create memories that aren't poisoned by manipulation or fear. And every morning when I wake up, I look at my mother's portrait hanging on my bedroom wall, the same one Cynthia had removed, and I whisper, we're winning. Every day, a little more, we're winning. Direct tone, connecting with audience. So I ask you, here on the other side of the screen, have you been through something like this? Has someone tried to rewrite your story, erase you from your own life? And if so, how did you resist? What kept you strong? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, I want to read each of your stories. Because when we share these experiences, when we take these lies out of the darkness and put them in the sun, they lose their power. Serpents can always lie in the shadows. But in the sun, everyone sees their true colors. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like. If you know someone who's being manipulated or gaslit, share it. Sometimes, a story like this can be the spark someone needs to realize they're not alone. And if you're going through this now, if someone is trying to make you doubt your own reality, let me tell you something my father would say, you're stronger than you think. Smarter than they imagine. And the truth, your truth, will win. It always wins. Thank you for listening to my story. See you in the next video. And remember, lies may run, but truth always catches V.